Welcome. I am so sorry that I cannot be there tonight. However, I didn't want you to miss out on any content from our course since it's a 7-week course. So please look at the announcements. I have provided some tips for the literature review, part 2. I am hoping to complete part 1 today. Notice I have extended the deadline for part 2. So that ERIE Part 2 and Part 3 are due at the same time, so February 5th by 11:59 p.m. I am still able to answer questions and emails. My vision is much better, just it flares up at some times and I didn't feel like it was probably safe. So we'll briefly go through what we were supposed to do tonight, and I have some in-class activities that we'll do next week. If you go to the weekly course material, and we are now in week 4. If you were gone last week, please make sure that you give me the basic tenets profile via email or in class next week so that I can give you points for that, as well as a summary of book club points. So for this week, we have a PowerPoint here that covers Jean Piaget and Lynn Vygotsky. I would like you to go through this PowerPoint and we'll do this together. There's 2 videos I'd like you to watch. Piaget's Stages of Cognitive Development. It's about a 5-minute video, almost 6 minutes. But really helps you pay attention to each stage and gives you examples of those stages. And then the Vygotsky Social Cultural Development is another about 10-minute video that focuses on elementary mental functions and all of the things you see there, particularly zone of proximal development, which is big, and scaffolding. It's not in the video, however, it is focused on the PowerPoint. And then after you contextually see the PowerPoint and these 2 videos, this is a summary video. It's quite short, it's a little bit silly, but does a great job really showing the differences between Piaget and Vygotsky. And then we will plan on doing, you probably don't see this, I have it not available, but we'll do a Vygotsky-Piaget Kahoot quiz when we meet next Tuesday. So again, if it says it's not available, there are items that you won't see. The big thing is that we make sure that we go through the PowerPoint. For the ERIE project, I'd like for you to email me with questions, set up times to meet with me. I apologize, I should have turned my computer volume off, but I can't when I'm recording. Set up times to meet with me or talk so that I can continue to support you through the ERIE project. When we meet next Tuesday, I would really like to focus on reviewing Piaget and cognitive development and then get into our weekly course material for part 5, which would catch us up. So I'd like to limit the questions to ERIE via individual, or I can create a discussion board so that we can talk. And then we will spend some time next week talking about B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura. So in the next 2 weeks, tonight and next week, we're covering Piaget, Vygotsky, Skinner, and Bandura, which is really the bulk of the course. So it's really important material, and that's why I felt like I should do this screencast for you all. If you go back to week 4, let's talk about the differences between Vygotsky and Jean Piaget. So you can open up that PowerPoint on your own and follow along with me. But Jean Piaget was considered one of the 20th century's most influential theorists. I know that you can read these, so I won't continue to go through that. But really, he had a very specific way of thinking about how we acquire knowledge in our development. And so he has organization, bringing order to our experience, adaptation, helps us interact and adjust to the world, assimilation, comparing and contrasting one's past knowledge with new information, and accommodation, reconstructing one's past knowledge to incorporate new information. So he believes very specifically in stages of development, that children learn from action. that they don't simply absorb it, but they can construct knowledge actively, and that cognitive abilities develop progressively. And what is cognitive development? That's increasing the capacity to differentiate and integrate information. And in the video regarding Piaget, you will actually see students, young students, start to do that. Also, the capacity to generate knowledge. So he's got 4 stages of development, and this is looked at in a couple of different ways in the PowerPoint. The sensory motor stage is when you are very small. You're born with reflexes, not thoughts, so infants. The actions and perceptions get more complex, and memories start to become more permanent. So if you can think about your own life, when was the first time you actually can have a memory that you recall? Then you go into the pre-operational stage, which is the next stage of development, which is simple knowledge. You know what things are. An apple is an apple. It is food. You can eat it. A banana is a banana. It's yellow. Fuzzy or sporadic logic starts to emerge. And then you graduate to the next level, and that's concrete operations. Logical reasoning for the observable world. Again, the video does a really nice job showing you all of those things. Formal operational stage is where we all should be, where we can have logic reasonings for abstract world. We have complex possibilities, and we even have underlying motives. So being able to think really abstractly. This is one way Piaget's theory looks. It's like stepping stones. So you can't get to one level up unless you completely finish the first stage. So you need to get through the sensory motor stage to get to the pre-operational stage. There's a lot of ways that this looks like. There's sub-stages within those, particularly within infancy. There's a lot that happens between the ages of 0 to 2 to 3 years old. And children develop differently as well. So you can look at those different visuals. The way I tend to think about Piaget is it gradually increases capacities to differentiate and integrate advanced capabilities to think. But I still think of them as the traditional stairs here. You have to graduate from this to go to this to go to this. So with that being said, there are some limitations that this provides. He focuses on sequences of stages, not the age. This is especially important for personality development in adulthood. Developing to the next stage is indicated by routine functioning, making sure that you can consistently function within the sensory motor stage before you go to the pre-operational stage. And then development is not about how much information one has, but rather how you can integrate what you know in a complex way. So one of the limitations before we go to Vygotsky is, and I'd like you to think about it, do you know some limitations of Piaget just in looking at stages of development? And I'll give you just a few seconds to think about that on your own. So the limitations that I come up with are, he doesn't take into account children with developmental disabilities. The stages, as we know, for children with developmental disabilities is not always the same. So this is a limitation to Piaget's theory, as well as some cultural implications. There are some things culturally appropriate that children may be taught or nurtured that may not coincide with Piaget's stages of development. So just a few things to be thinking about when you look at these theorists and understanding the strengths of the theory, knowing that a theory is meant to be a framework for understanding, yet also acknowledging some limitations within that theory. And so, again, Piaget likes it to be a very, step up, you graduate, consistently demonstrate the skills, then you go to the next stage, consistently demonstrate, and then you go to the formal operational stage, whereas we as adults should be. Okay, let's go to Leonid Vygotsky. Vygotsky, there's a lot of information here about him, Russian psychologist. He worked to create theories of cognitive development. He died at a very young age of tuberculosis at age 38. and some interesting things about him. For 20 years after his death, it was forbidden to discuss or disseminate or reprint any of his writings. He worked under the Stalin administration. And after Stalin's death, his writings were rediscovered, and now he's one of a very revered theorist in development. Different than Piaget's image of an individual constructing knowledge, he thinks everything is social. So Vygotsky saw cognitive development as depending on more interactions with people and tools in the world. Tools could be pen, paper, computers, it could be symbols, language, math, signs, it could be social norms, things like that. So instead of this stepping stone or the individual steps, he believes everything's constructed through our understanding and interactions with each other, which is a little bit more of a holistic view to development and learning. I won't get into too much of this, the role of culture in development, because I want to give you an overall. So I'm going to skip through a few slides. He does believe that we're active learners and we make sense of our environment around us. So we talked last week, and I think the week before, about just learning social norms like proxemic space and what's okay and what's not okay. And we don't learn that in a formal context, but yet we learn it through social cues if something's okay or not. The other is the zone of proximal development. This is specific to Vygotsky, which is a little different than Piaget. And as we think about this as teachers, it's the difference between what a learner or a student can do independently and what they can do with guidance. We know from reading Willingham that if you push someone cognitively too far, they tend to shut down. However, if you can find the area they're at and then challenge them in an appropriate way, you can expand their zone of proximal development, because with guidance, then they can learn or further their skills in a particular area. Scaffolding is the term that we use, and that's the tendency to tailor the support to the learner or student near the limit of capacity. So we may have guided participation, apprenticeship. For us in our classrooms, it may look like peer-to-peer guidance. When you're teaming a peer up with a lower functioning peer in math to a higher functioning peer, so that they can use scaffolding techniques to increase their skill level, again, being mindful that a challenge can be too difficult. And also, it could be a teacher giving one-on-one or group support. It could be a parent if they're working in the classroom. So it's just that ability for a more advanced learner to help build on the knowledge that's already existing to expand that knowledge in the zone of proximal development. Working in the zone of proximal development in different cultures is important. Again, Vygotsky does take the social cultural perspective. Cultures where adults and children are segregated, learning is in schools. When they're together, most of the day learning is through real observation. You may think about what's acceptable at dinner time. Do you sit down? What are the norms? Do you eat together? Or verbal versus nonverbal, emphasis on instruction. Okay, so there's all these variables that come into working in different cultures within the zone of proximal development. So playing in the zone of proximal development, students are more likely to engage in symbolic play when others are present. Cooperative social play of preschoolers is related to later understanding of others' feelings and beliefs. And there will be more about that on the video that I'm going to show. So as far as Vygotsky's implications for education, his beliefs were that learning takes place actively, it's not passive, and that we assess what is known to estimate our capabilities. Guided participants structured by teachers who would gradually turn over more activity to students, so more project-based designed activities and cooperative learning exercises help each other. It can be very effective. The role of language in cognitive development is the primary method of passing modes of thinking to children. It becomes an important tool of intellectual adaptation. We know this presents a specific challenge for our ELL students, so we have to be cognizant of that. This is the next couple slides kind of look at speech, Piaget's version versus Vygotsky, so I'll let you look at that on your own. They've got a little bit of different viewpoints on that in terms of language and thought. So I will like for you to look at that on your own. The other, I will let you look at these two videos without me. And then the Piaget-Vygotsky is a video that I would like to show as part of this screencast, just because I want to make sure that you understand the differences. And again, it's a silly video. However, it's a really good one just to point out in a very short amount of time the differences.
To ask you the same thing. I'm speaking to the class about my theories. Well, I was going to talk to them about cognitive development. Ha! Don't make me laugh. You put no emphasis on social factors in your theories. Speak nothing of abnormal development. How dare you speak theories to me? Your degree clearly states you majored in law. My theory on the 4 stages of cognitive development have been highly researched. I have come to the conclusion that children don't think like adults. They especially don't learn from them. I beg to differ. Children do learn from others. It's called scaffolding. Knowledge comes about from experiences within their culture. Learning happens from the outside in. What's scaffolding? Scaffolding is a teaching strategy that provides individualized support based on the learner's zone of proximal development. Well, since you seem so smart, then please elaborate what proximal development is. Proximal development is the distance between the actual development level, as determined by independent problem solving, and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. What you say is impossible. According to my theory, children are only able to perform in a certain cognitive stage. How so? A human understands whatever information fits into their view of the world. When information does not fit, then they must re-examine and adjust their thinking to accommodate the new information. As they do this, they move through 4 stages. With each stage, their ability to interpret information grows. Well, I would love to discuss this at length, but the bell has rang and I have prior obligations, as do you.
Okay, so there, in that short clip, you can see that some of the information in the PowerPoint, the stages of development for Piaget and also scaffolding, zone and proximal development with Vygotsky, are reinforced in this very short video. I can't emphasize enough that I want you to watch this Piaget's 4 stages, because it actually has children and examples of them going through each of these stages, and then also the Vygotsky social cultural development video as well. That way, when you leave this class or for next week, we can have an in-depth review conversation about Piaget and Vygotsky and ways of learning. And I'd like for you to come prepared to tell me what you think some limitations are to each of those and what are some benefits to those in terms of teaching. And you can use your own classroom examples to have that discussion. And then we'll do the Piaget-Vygotsky Kahoot quiz as well. So to prepare for next week, you want to go to Weekly Course Materials, Week 5, and you can go ahead and look in this folder, Abby. This I would like for you to read ahead of time. Abby is a girl student that has selective mutism. Here is the article. You don't have to print it out. You can read it online. And then here's some additional information about selective mutism. And then I will bring the plan for Abby, and we'll do those as a group. So the plan for Abby is including things like, what are her strengths? How would you teach her? What are some of the things that she has to deal with selective mutism? And how might classical conditioning be a strategy for that? And so this part I will prepare for you. However, you do need to read this article ahead of time. If you don't know what selective mutism is, that's okay. You will after you read this printout. And then we will review the PowerPoint for B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura. I would like you to view that ahead of time so that when we meet, we can also just do a review. And I won't do a screencast on this one, but I would like you. There's 44 slides, so it's quite long. There's a lot of information in this one, and so I would like for us to really spend some time being prepared and know what's in it. That way, when we meet with our short amount of time next week, we're actually covering 4 theorists in one night, which is a lot. So I want everybody to come prepared and ready to talk, take notes about each of the theorists and understand it so that we can facilitate and use our time wisely. This video here I will show in class, so you don't need to worry about that. In fact, I can take it off. That way you're not confused. It's just a quick kind of funny video. If you're a Big Bang Theory, you'll like it. And it just shows operant conditioning at work. As far as the book club goes, we are supposed to read chapters, it's 2 chapters a night. So we're actually going to cover 4 chapters next week. Again, really succinct. We're going to use our time wisely. And we will cover chapters 3 and 4, 5 and 6 all next week. So come prepared to do about a 30-minute to 45-minute book club. So you can see where our Erie project then, which has been taking up a lot of our class time, will be minimized next week. However, I welcome any questions. I can email you, I can Skype, I can FaceTime, I can Zoom, and do whatever to support you throughout this project. I've been, even with the illness that I have, I've been trying to really respond to emails quickly. So I encourage you to review the samples that are in Erie. Erie Part 3, there's a sample paper. Again, both Erie Part 2 and 3 the due dates are the same. I would, Erie Part 4 is that 2-page concise paper. And then Erie Part 5 will happen on the last night of class, and you will have to just upload your handout. And if you need copies made for that, let me know, and I can make those for you. So I think that brings us up to date. Again, I have some activities that will reinforce some fun activities I'd like to do in class also next week. I know I'm packing a lot into next week. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. I do extend my sincere apologies for not being there in person. However, as graduate students, I know that you can take this information in and make sense of it. And then on next Tuesday, we will talk about it, discuss it. But I'm going to be very intentional about how we use our time. So if it relates to Erie, please do that. Even if all of you have, like a group of you have the same questions, send me a group email and let me use that time when we're not in class face-to-face to help you and support you through that. I wish you all a great evening. Good luck in your classes this week. Stay healthy, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.